Genesis 1:25 to 27. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humans in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humans in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them.
Hello, everyone. As you know, my name is Shamika, and I'm a psychologist. So I've been working in the mental health space for a number of years, and I absolutely love what I do. I have the opportunity that I've wanted for a lifetime, and it gives me... Ooh, where am I? Yeah, that's great. As a psychologist, I have the privilege of studying the mind, human behavior, and the deeper aspects of what makes us who we are. So what does it mean to be truly human? I thought I'd start today by asking a few questions that I'd like for you to reflect on, and we'll revisit these questions at the end and see how or if your answers have changed at all. You're welcome to close your eyes or get yourself into a comfortable position while I read out these questions. What does being human mean to me? Are the parts of myself that I like the most or the least the ones that are most human? What could my life look like if I embrace being human? Today, I'd like to talk about 4 different aspects of psychology that as mental health clinicians we learn about that I actually think are mirrored really nicely in the Bible and ultimately can be applied to what I think it means to be human. Thank you, Justin, for reading our Bible verse for today. The opening chapters of Genesis shows us that humanity is unique in creation because we are made in the image and likeness of God. This means that for each of us, we carry within us something that is divine. It's not just about our physical form, but rather our capacity for relationships, love, creativity, moral decision-making, and our intrinsic worth. Being created in God's image bestows upon us dignity and purpose. It means our identity is not defined by the changing opinions of society, our achievements, or our failures. Instead, our identity is anchored in the unchanging truth that we are beloved children of God and have inherent value and worth. I would like to point out here as well that although this passage talks about sea and land and male and female, this is an expression of language, and that God's diversity of creation is intentionally inclusive of every creature and every person, no matter how we identify. From a psychological perspective, identity is understood as the way we see ourselves and understand our place in the world. Various psychological frameworks explore this concept, such as Erik Erikson, real name, theory of psychosocial development. Erikson emphasizes the importance of identity formation during adolescence, where individuals explore different roles and integrate them into a cohesive sense of self. We create identity through trying on different hats and challenging the roles we've been taught to play. Similarly, Carl Rogers uses a humanistic approach to talk about self-concept, which includes 3 components. 1, self-image, the view we have of ourselves. 2, self-esteem, how much value we place on ourselves. And 3, the ideal self, what we wish we were like. Rogers states that the choices that we make, the environment that we surround ourselves in, and how we think can be either congruent or incongruent with our self-concept or identity. And if they are incongruent, then there's more work to be done. So how can we merge these 2 ideas together of being made in God's image and that our choices, environment, and thoughts shape our identity? Well, when we view our identity through these psychological lenses, it becomes clear how easily we can be swayed by societal expectations, peer pressure, and even our own internal struggles. However, as Christians, we believe that we are made in the likeness of God. This means that we carry within us intrinsic value, worth, and dignity. Being created in God's image shapes our self-esteem, which is our sense of worthiness and belonging. Psychology teaches us that healthy self-esteem is essential for mental and emotional well-being, and the Bible reminds us that this worth is not based in our achievements or our failures, but on the fact that we are all God's beloved creation. Every human being carries a reflection of God's nature, our capacity for love, reason, and moral choice. We are all fearfully and wonderfully made to be unique representations of God's image. Emotions are an integral part of our humanity. The Bible is rich with emotional expression. From sorrow to joy, anger to peace, it doesn't shy away from depicting a full range of human emotions. In Jesus expressing emotions in a fully human way, emotions that aren't suppressed or ignored, it shows us that we can express our emotions and that it is vital for our relationship with God and being created in God's image. It shows us that grief is a natural response to loss and that anger is a natural response to hurt. From a psychological perspective, emotions are understood to be complex reactions that involve subjective feelings, physiological responses, and behavioral expressions. Emotions play a critical role in how we interact with the world and with others. They serve a function and are needed. There have been many studies conducted on emotions, and if there are emotions felt and expressed by people regardless of sex, cultural background, geographical location, or languages spoken. There have been psychologists like Paul Ekman who have identified basic emotions that are universally experienced. So those would be happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. Although we have these basic emotions, there is an incredibly large vocabulary that we can use to describe how we feel. I don't know if anyone can see that, but this is a feelings wheel, one of many that can be used to help us identify what we are feeling and use it to communicate with others. This one is my personal favorite, and I use it daily in my practice. Although feeling our feelings is important, it is also important that we have a strong vocabulary surrounding our feelings, as this will help us connect with others and bring us closer to one another. If we look at being human through a cognitive behavioral approach, this demonstrates that our emotions are closely linked to our thoughts and behaviors and actually interact and impact each other. We can see how we interpret situations, so our thoughts, influences our emotions that we experience, and then therefore the behaviors that we take. We have emotions for a reason, evolutionarily and spiritually speaking. Emotions serve as indicators of what is happening within us and around us. They can alert us to danger, draw us closer to others, and help us process our experiences. Emotions can also lead us to deeper self-awareness and growth in our relationship with God. God designed us with the capacity to feel emotions for a reason. Although emotions are an essential aspect of being human, it can be difficult to experience overwhelming anxiety, depression, grief, or uncontrollable anger. There is nothing wrong with us for feeling these ways. They are natural and a God-given part of being human, but it doesn't always make that easier to feel. From a psychological perspective, mindfulness and emotional regulation techniques can help us manage our emotions effectively. Mindfulness involves being present in the moment and aware of our emotions without judgment. That's the key part. Don't judge what you're feeling. It allows us to respond rather than react impulsively. It involves being an observer to our emotions and being curious about why we react in certain ways. There are many different therapy frameworks that talk about emotional regulation and different ways that we can do that, but a few of the common ones would be exercising, talking, or using calming activities. However we feel, we can remember that we can always bring our emotions to God, trusting that we will receive guidance on how to experience them. We can turn to prayer to process and reflect on our feelings, then rather than suppressing our emotions, learning how to express them and act on them in ways that embrace the humans that we want to be. We see a vast range of emotions described in the Bible, and Jesus doesn't only express the positive ones. He gets sad, mad, disappointed. But I wonder how many of us shame ourselves for feeling those same emotions, and how that impacts our sense of identity. Do we think we're wrong for feeling angry, embarrassed, or ashamed, or do we see ourselves as God made us? Human. Attachment and connection are deeply embedded in the psychological makeup, in our psychological makeup, but are also addressed in the Bible. God designed us for connection with Him, with others, and with ourselves. The Bible has many demonstrations of attachment and connection, a couple being in a close-knit community, having the relationship between Jesus and his disciples, or sharing a meal in communion with others. There are many references to community and the importance of humans not living in isolation. This sentiment is also shared in psychology. From the moment we're born, we are hardwired for connection. The common framework that is discussed is, of course, attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby. This also sheds light on the emotional life of humans. It emphasizes the importance of secure emotional bonds, particularly in early childhood, and how these bonds influence our emotional responses and relationships throughout life. Bowlby's research showed us that from infancy, humans are hardwired for attachment. The bonds that we form with our primary caregivers in our early life shape our emotional and social development. These early attachments influence our ability to form and maintain relationships throughout our life. Bowlby identified different attachment styles: secure, anxious, ambivalent, avoidant, or disorganized, and describe how individuals typically relate to others based on their early experiences. Secure attachment, where a person feels safe and valued in relationships, is associated with positive outcomes, such as emotional resilience and the ability to form healthy relationships. In contrast, insecure attachment styles can lead to difficulties in relationships and emotional regulation. Psychologist Mary Ainsworth expanded on this theory by observing how infants responded to separation and reunions with their caregivers. Her work demonstrated that securely attached children were more likely to explore their environment knowing they had a safe base to return to. This idea of safe base can be applied to spirituality too, where God provides us the ultimate safe and secure foundation, allowing us to explore our environment knowing that we have a safe base to return to. Our relationships with others reflect our relationship with God. When we experience healthy, loving connections with others, we get a glimpse of the perfect love and connection that God offers us. Conversely, when we struggle with attachment issues, it can also impact our spiritual life, making it harder for us to trust and connect with God. I'm currently reading this book, The Reconnected Heart, by Dr. Jonathan Andrews, who's actually a Christian psychologist based in Brisbane. And there's a quote in it that says, "Injuries of connection can be the deepest and most disruptive of all psychological conditions, leading to deep feelings of betrayal, worthlessness, shame, and alienation. But there is hope. Whilst it is true that relationships can hurt us, they can also heal us." Some of what I'm talking about here is actually inspired by this book, so I recommend reading it. We can view our relationship with God as an invitation to find our identity, security, and sense of belonging in them. And maybe this connection with God can be the foundation that enables us to form healthy attachments with others. The church is called to be a place of connection and attachment, and we are called to be a community where people feel valued, supported, and connected. In a world where loneliness and isolation are increasingly common, the church has the opportunity to be a refuge, a place where people can experience the love and connection we were created for. This is particularly important in our church, I think, where many of us have felt unwelcome and rejected by other places. This means being intentional about building relationships, welcoming the stranger, supporting one another in good times and bad. It means being the safe base for one another, reflecting the secure attachment that we have in God and our relationships with each other. As human beings, we are hardwired for connection and attachment, and this is deeply rooted in both our psychological makeup and our spiritual design. The Bible speaks powerfully to this need, showing us that the ultimate connection is with God, and that this connection enables us to form healthy, loving relationships with others. Growth is a universal aspect of being a human being. It is central to our spiritual journey. It's a natural process, but should also be an intentional one when it comes to psychological and spiritual growth. The Bible has many references to growth, particularly language around seeds or vines or branches, where there's an emphasis on the spiritual growth and our dependence on faith to achieve it. From a psychological perspective, growth and development are fundamental to understanding the human experience. Developmental psychology is dedicated to studying how people grow and change over the course of their lives and how different aspects of being human, so physical, cognitive, emotional, and social development, can change and grow too. Piaget focused on cognitive development, explaining how children develop the ability to think and understand the world. Piaget's stages of cognitive development describe how thinking evolves from simple, concrete concepts in early childhood to more complex, abstract thinking in adolescence and adulthood. This cognitive growth is essential for problem-solving, moral reasoning, and understanding spiritual truths. We can understand that growth is a process influenced by a variety of factors, including our environment, relationships, and individual choices. This work also highlights the growth that is not just about achieving milestones, but also continuous adaptation and learning throughout life. Just as with psychological growth, it's a process, and so is spiritual. Just with psychological growth as well, spirituality requires nurturing in order to let it grow. I think that spiritual growth involves several key components. The first being a relationship with God. The more time we spend in prayer, worship, and studying the Bible, or whatever you believe deepens your relationship with God, the more we can grow and understand ourselves and God. Our growth is rooted in our connection to Him. Community. Growth happens in the context of community. We need others to challenge, encourage, validate, question, and hold us accountable. Community is a vital part of our growth process. Understanding and action. We firstly need to understand our faith and then put our faith into action. As with many psychological principles, it's not just enough to have awareness or an understanding. We need to make choices and then take action. The last is challenges. Growth often comes through challenges. Our faith is strengthened by the trials that we face. So if you're going through a hard time, I challenge you to try and think about it as a period of growth rather than a setback. Just as we grow intellectually, emotionally, and socially, we are also called to grow spiritually. God is at work in every stage of our lives, using our experiences, relationships, and even our challenges to shape us into the people we are created to be. Growth and development are integral to being human, with both the Bible and psychology showing us that growth is a lifelong process. It's not always easy. It's often involving not feeling pleasurable about anything at all, but it's essential for us to become the people that God has made us to be, if we are really to live in His image. So what does it mean to be human? It means bearing the image of God, even in our brokenness. It means recognizing our need for connection, understanding our identity in Christ, and embracing the lifelong journey of growth. It is to be created for relationships and community and finding our ultimate fulfillment in God's love and purpose for our lives. So let's revisit those questions again from the start and see if you answer them differently now. What does it mean to be human to me? Are the parts of myself that I like the most or the least the ones that are most human? What could my life look like if I embrace being human? I'm going to leave you on something that I often say to my clients. I am an imperfect human being sitting in front of another imperfect human being. Let's be human together.